friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. Today is day 10 of middle grade March, and so far I have read 10 books. I am definitely on track for completing a book a day, which is very exciting. I made it to 29 last year out of the 31 days in March, and so I'm hoping to at least get that far again, but so far I'm on track. But I didn't want to wait till the end of the month and then have to tell you about 31 or 29 books. So I'm going to tell you about the 10 that I've read already today, and I'm just going to go in order of what I read first. The first two books that I read were actually rereads, and the first one was one that was recommended to me on my owned TBR shelf. I've read it before I ever started using Goodreads, so it's not marked as read. Well, it is now, but that's Bridge to Terabithia by Katherine Paterson. This was a Newbery Medal winner. I don't know if I need to tell the story of this. This one just deals with unlikely friendship and a lot of imagination, and the tragedy at the end just totally breaks my heart. I really enjoyed this one. The second book that I finished, I listened to the audiobook of Little House in the Big Woods, which is the first book in that Little House series. I was really hoping to like this a lot more than I did. I enjoyed it because of nostalgia, but I really was getting quite bored with all of the details as to how to make butter and how to milk a cow and a lot of the details of life in the big woods and the prairie that didn't really have anything to do with the characters or move the story along. I think I enjoyed it a lot more when I was a kid than I did now. So I'm not sure I'm going to continue rereading the whole series, but I am glad that I reread the first one. Oh yeah, and that's by Laura Ingalls Wilder. The third book that I read, I absolutely loved. It is the sequel to a book that I read last year, so fantastic for crossing off another sequel that I need to read. This is The War I Finally Won by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. Whew, that's a tongue twister. I have to really think about it. Like I said, this is a sequel, so I'm not going to say much about this one. The first book, The War That Saved My Life, is about this girl named Ada and her little brother Jamie. They are evacuated out of London in the beginning of World War II. Ada has club feet. Her feet are turned, her ankles bones are turned, and it make it very, very difficult, even impossible for her to walk. Her mother is just an awful person, treats Ada horribly. A lot of abuse happens in that first book. Her mother is going to send Jamie out to the countryside, but not Ada. Ada teaches herself how to walk and escapes with her brother. And they end up in the countryside living with this woman named Susan, who is not expecting or wanting children in her life at this point in time. She's had a lot of grief of her own. And so the first book is really about those three people coming together and what happens from there. This just continues their story. In this one, we really focus on Ada and the fear and the grief that she is still really dealing with and working through. It's just as beautiful, maybe not as action-packed or as quick-paced as the first book, but I really loved seeing Ada continue that growth and continue the story from the first book. It was just beautiful. Then I read my first book in verse, which is really one of the challenges. I read Maybe by Caroline Starr Rose, and this was interesting to read along the same times as reading one of the Little House books, because this also takes place kind of in that pioneer time period, early America. Maybe's family lives in Kansas, and Maybe is sent to another homestead to help out this man and his new wife. She's kind of not very thrilled about this idea, but also understands that she needs to help out her family. So she goes to this other homestead, starts taking care of cooking and cleaning and helping out this new bride who doesn't really care for the prairie at all and ends up running away. The husband chases after her, and Maybe is left stranded in this new homestead. Has no idea how to get home, couldn't get there if she tried, has to survive on her own. It is written in verse. I read this just in one evening in just a little short amount of time. I really loved it. We really get inside Maybe's head and see what she does as she tries to survive on her own. She's only, I think, 11 years old or 12. Loved it. I think I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was also a Newbery Medal winner, and it was also for my Goodreads read-along group, and that is Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. I have been recommended to read this book so many times, especially by Katie from Life Between Words, who is my co-host for this lovely readathon. And I was very excited to get to this. Finally, yay! It took a little while for me to get into it. I was enjoying it, but I didn't quite see what all the hype was about. So in this story, we follow Salamanca Tree Hiddle, Sal, who is on a road trip with her Gram and Gramps to find her mother. We don't really know what happened. Why did her mother leave? As they're on this road trip, the grandparents ask Sal to tell them about a story. And so she begins to tell them the story about her friend Phoebe. And as they're going along, we kind of see what was going on in Sal's life through this story that she's telling of Phoebe, who is quite a character on her own. Gram and Gramps are the most wonderful couple. I absolutely love their love story and the love that they have for Sal. The ending of this book, if you saw my Instagram stories, it wrecked me. I was bawling. Absolutely loved this story and could totally see how it could win a Newbery Medal and how it could be a definite favorite for so many people. I absolutely loved it. I love a book with a story within a story. I think those are a lot of fun. Then I read another Newbery Medal winner and another book written in verse, and that is Out of the Dust by Karen Hesse, or Hesse. Not sure how that's pronounced. This one takes place in the Dust Bowl in American history, so the 1930s time period, and we follow this young girl named Billie Jo. And again, this took me a little bit to get into it, but this was really heavy as well. Just all of the struggles and the grit that people who lived on the plains at this time had to have, and the grit literally, because the wind was a constant issue because it just blew dust everywhere, and so dirt was in their food and dirt was in their homes and dirt was everywhere. There was no getting away from it. Along with that difficulty, there was some sadness and tragedy in the family as well, and just hearing it from the perspective of Billie Jo and her relationship with her father and how that was affected by this tragedy, it just was so relatable. I could really understand all the emotions that were expressed in this. I'm not one who typically reads or reaches towards poetry, but these two books that I've read in verse so far this month are really inspiring me to pick up poetry because I absolutely loved both of these. I love just the way the words are put together at times and the beauty in the phrasing of the words and how I can so quickly understand and relate to the emotions that are expressed. And maybe that's because it's written in verse. I don't know. There's something about it that I'm really connecting with at this moment in time. I should probably capitalize on that and read something that's poetic. I don't know. So any suggestions about poets I should start with? I don't know. It scares me, but I'm also willing to give it a try. Not in March though. I still have a few more written in verse. Hopefully those I connect with just as much. We'll see. So after all the tears and heartache from these first 6 books that I read, except maybe the Little House book, I didn't really get emotionally connected with that one, but all of these were very heavy and dealt with some very serious and deep issues, which I absolutely love that middle grade books do that. But after that, I needed something a little more fun and lighthearted, and I picked up the perfect book for that. It is The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. This is the story of a robot named Roz, whose cargo ship gets caught in a storm or something, and her crate ends up on this deserted island. It's not completely deserted though. There are tons and tons of animals on this island. Roz starts out being very isolated on this island. The animals consider her a monster and leave her alone for the most part, and she just camouflages herself and then observes and sits back and just watches how these animals interact with each other and with their own species and with other species, and what are their characteristics and traits, and she just learns all about these animals and eventually slowly begins to make connections with these animals and eventually becomes a very important part of this island. It just was so lovely and fun. I'm definitely interested in reading the sequel. I'm not sure if it's going to be a longer series, but I know there are at least 2 books in this series or duology. I don't know what it's going to be. But yeah, it definitely hit the spot as far as a lighter, fun, heartwarming read. Highly recommend it. I then read a book that I wanted to get to last year and just never did, and this is one that I own. It's off my shelves, The Land of Stories. This is The Wishing Spell, the first book. This is by Chris Colfer, who I love in Glee. I went through a Glee phase a number of years ago, but very excited to read this book. If you are a lover of fairy tales, the classic fairy tales, Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, this is the book for you. In this book, we have a brother and sister, twin brother and sister, whose grandmother and father used to read these stories from the land of stories to them and just tell a lot of tales. And they, one day the grandmother gives this book to them, and turns out there's a little bit of magic involved, and these two end up in the actual fairy tale land. And what I love is that, and I refer to this often, there is a map in the front that describes the whole land. So it's like all of these stories, Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, all of them exist. Red Riding Hood, I forget what else, but they all exist. Goldilocks, that's another one. Jack and the Beanstalk. They all exist in this land together. Ultimately, the brother and sister go on this scavenger hunt to collect these items so that they are able to use a wishing spell to go back home. So it's just a lot of fun as we travel through the land, meeting all of these characters. These two escape multiple times from some pretty dangerous situations. It was a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed reading this one. I think there are, I want to say 5 or 6 in this series now. I only have the first one, so I'd have to get the others from the library at this point, but I'm not sure I'm going to read the next one this month, but I definitely would be interested in reading more from this world. It was a lot of fun. The 9th book that I read was one that was sent to me by Little Bee Books. It is A Storm of Strawberries by Jo Cotterill. This cover is gorgeous. In this book, we follow Darby and her family. It takes place over the course of one weekend, where there are a lot of storms coming in, and her parents are very anxious about what's going to happen to their greenhouses and their huge strawberry harvest. The storm that's going on outside is also reflected in what's going on inside of Darby. Darby is a 12-year-old who has Down syndrome. Her sister Katie, and this whole family is very close, and her sister Katie are super close sisters, but Katie Katie is about, I think, 16 years old, and she has a friend come stay for the weekend, Lissa. And Darby is very jealous and very insecure about Lissa. Lissa and Darby did not have a very good first meeting. Over the course of the weekend, Darby begins to accept Lissa a little bit more as a friend that Katie has, until she sees them kissing one time. And this kind of opens up a whole nother storm within the family of these two girls whose relationship is a little different than everybody thought. This book is really about accepting people for who they are, and love coming in all shapes and sizes and abilities. And yeah, it was a very sweet story, and I'm glad that I read it. And stay tuned later this month, because I will be doing a giveaway for this one, as well as another one that they sent to me, but I will wait to tell you about the giveaway till I've read both of the books. But yeah, this is a very sweet story. And finally, just today, I finished the audiobook of Hello Universe, which is yet another Newbery winner. This won last year, 2018. This is written by Erin Entrada Kelly, and this book also includes a lot of diversity. We have a deaf character, we have 2 sisters who are Japanese American, we have a Filipinx little boy who is very quiet. And this book also happens in a very short period of time. I didn't love this one, however. I felt like there was a couple things that really bothered me. In this book, we have a bully who is just horrible to everyone that he meets that's different from him, and the dad of the bully was horrible. We have Virgil, who is the youngest in a Filipino family where the father is very, very focused on sports, and you're a little boy, you should play sports. His grandmother Lola was absolutely wonderful, and we get a little bit of folklore, like Filipino folklore, through some of the stories that she tells him, which I thought was a really fun added touch to it. The 2 Japanese American sisters, Kaori and Gen, there was this like spiritualist situation. Like, Kaori is a self-proclaimed psychic, and she consults the stars and crystals, and I wasn't very down for all of that. It was an interesting side of things. And their parents also seemed a little distant, and she refers to her mom as Mrs. Tanaka instead of mom. Yeah, it was just strange parental relationships in this one. And fate kind of plays a big role in how all of these characters come together. I didn't really love it. I'm not quite sure. Of all of the Newbery Medal winners that I've read so far, there aren't many yet. I have a long ways to go to reach that goal. But of all the ones that have won so far, this is the one that I'm a little more perplexed about. It did not blow me away like most of the others have. It was an okay story. I can totally see why some people love it. It was just an okay book for me. I gave it 3 stars. So there are the 10 books that I've read on the first 10 days of middle grade March. I hopefully will have 10 more for you on the 20th. We shall see how I do. But I would love to hear from you. If you're participating in Middle Grade March, I would love to talk with you down in the comments about the best middle grade book that you've read so far this month. If you're not participating, but you've read any of these, I would love to hear your thoughts on them. And just about anything else, you know I love talking with you down in the comments, so let's chat down there. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be talking to you in another video very soon. Bye!